Alright, here we are at the South Eastern Masonic Centre in lovely Keysborough, Melbourne. I'll be walking in here. Gonna have some interesting commentary with my buddy Larry about Masonic tracing boards and history and such. Plaque dedicating 1981. Okay. There we are. We have some interesting windows here. Okay, and here we are. Welcome to the South Eastern Masonic Centre, Keysborough. Another video. I filmed Lodge Room 1 here, which will be edited into our DVD after these segments. And today we'll be viewing Lodge Room 2 and going in, talking with Brother Larry about various things. He's actually on the phone at the moment. See, we have some Masonic artifacts and books on sale here. This is a good classic I have at home. My Masonic coffee cup. And various artifacts that I've been collecting.
Is it for the same lodge?
Books. This book here, Information on the Lodge Workings. It's very good. Gives you footwork diagrams and other interesting things. Don't know about the Sons of the Light. This Let There Be Light is a good book. Very informative on Masonic terms. Concord of Sweet Sounds, which is their chorus book. Singing is very important in Masonry Down Under. I have this book as well, short lectures. Some excellent material in there. Okay.
A-R-O-V. Okay.
And here we are entering.
Okay. If you'll tell me on his first name, I can just take it from here and write it up from here and fax it
Books
in.
and Bibles on sale. Over here we have some apron regalia.
Yeah, let me know. Thank you now. Bye now.
Mark and Third Degree Crafts. And here's the man, Brother Larry Goulet. Say hello to the Brethren of America.
Hello, brothers of America. How are you? I'm basically from Indiana originally.
Larry's an interesting character because he is the bridge between the two worlds.
Well, we try to be anyway. So anyway, welcome.
Yes.
Hopefully someday you'll come over here and have a visit.
Indeed, that'd be an achievement to get some of these characters out of their provincial, small-town world. But
exactly. Did you show them the various aprons?
Yes. Yes.
Did you show them the mark?
Yeah. This here is the mark apron, right?
That's right.
Over on the right.
And then down below to the right is the chapter.
Right, chapter regalia. Since I'm in the chapter, I've also filmed that in my own collection. Now, this is Grand Lodge here?
This is Grand Lodge.
Yeah, that's the chapter, of course. Grand Lodge regalia. What are those flags about? Is that the?
That's the first degree of the Grand Lodge rank, which is called the Standard Bearer. Because you see the two standards.
And the standards stand for what?
Well, these two standards are the Victoria Masonic flags, which depict the three Grand Lodges that made up Australia Masonic, which was from Ireland, Scotland, and England. And then it has the Victorian symbol, same as you would
on the flags we see in the lodges.
Same as you would in a state flag.
I see.
And our flag is made up of the three main Grand Lodges that combine to make one.
Interesting that the mark apron is so similar to the craft third degree apron. Is there any particular reason for that? Because it's supposed to complete so-called the second degree. I would think they would have two circles instead of three.
Well, under the English Masonic, they only recognize 5 degrees. Naturally, the entered apprentice, the fellow craft, and the master mason. And then they go into the 4th degree, which they call the mark degree, and the 5th degree, which is called the chapter.
Right. So in the mark degree, is that what you become the excellent master mason, equivalent to the first part of the arch degrees?
That would be similar to the arch.
And then you become exalted in the so-called 5th degree in the arch.
That's right. And also your chapter, you go into, I believe it's probably in the 10th, 11th, 12th, something like that. When you look up the degrees in the Scottish Rite, you'll see references being made with the with the top priest names of the chapter in the mark. There's references being made in your degrees, and you'll know that they're talking about the mark degree, which is here is separate.
Right.
Over there, it's an extension.
Aha.
Because you have extensions to the 3rd degree, and your 4th degree is a totally different. I believe your 4th to the 14th is called the infinable degree.
A what degree?
Infinable. Infinable.
Aha.
Okay, which means forever.
Indeed.
And in those 14, up to the 14th degree, you'll find the mark in the chapter.
Aha. Excellent.
Okay?
Okay, so let's proceed out here back into the foyer. Foyer.
He pronounces it properly.
And I love this picture, just briefly, you have here. Queen Sheba visiting King Solomon. Now, what possessed you to have this, just because of the King Solomon connection, obviously?
Well, basically of the King Solomon's connection, because I believe even in your 1st, 2nd, and 3rd degree, everything is schooled around King Solomon.
Right.
And his temple. So this is why we have that in there. And naturally in our history, I don't know if in your history, but while her visit was with King Solomon, when she got ready to go back home to Ethiopia, she had a child by King Solomon.
Menelik.
And the child, when he grew up, came back. And when he came back, he secretly took the Ark of the Covenant back with him. Yes. Some historians say.
And there's interesting support for that. Obviously, one of the big books you could be referring to is The Sign and the Seal by Hancock, which talks all about the Ethiopia connection to the Ark. And actually, Hancock went to Ethiopia, to Addis Ababa, and curiously, they have a Ark of the Covenant procession in their sacred rituals, led by characters dressed as the Knights Templar.
That's right.
And it's been going on for hundreds of years, and there's no other obvious connection, because, is it just coincidence that the Templars and the Ark are connected, and then there's a ritual?
No, there's no
independently existing?
Yeah, it's not a coincidence. You got to remember too that the Templars in those days, back in the
1200s, etc.
No, actually they started 1099, 1098. Right. The Templars obviously were over in that area. When they went over there, they wanted to, remember when they dug under, supposedly under the Second Temple,
right,
and came back with all of the various artifacts and everything. And
right, well, I'll get back to that.
One of them was the Ark of the Covenant.
Right.
And they took it. Now, what's interesting, maybe your brothers might know over there is a poster, and I'm trying to locate it, that shows the Knights Templar within the background, the Ark of the Covenant.
Uh-huh.
And I'm trying to find that to kind of fill this in.
Right.
Also, there is a poster out showing King Solomon giving the blessing of the Second Temple.
The Second Temple?
The Second Temple.
I see.
Okay, because the First Temple naturally was through Moses and up through, not Moses, but up through, you probably know your history better than I do on that one, but Solomon was in the Second Temple.
Okay, so
Our First Temple.
The First Temple,
and then,
right.
And then when they were conquered by
The
Babylon,
Babylonians.
the Babylonians
Took them away. They came back.
They were doing the second temple.
But the second temple never got past the foundation
Never
stage.
got past the foundation.
Because they were just in
That's
chaos
right.
politically.
This is in the first temple.
Right, right.
But when I said he made his blessing on the second temple, it was really the first temple that he made the blessing on.
Right. And I think what you might have been referring to there is the fact that the Solomon's temple was called the second tabernacle.
That's right.
And the first tabernacle was Moses in the wilderness.
That's right.
With the tents.
Yep.
And it's the veils, etc., which we see repeated in the Holy Royal Arch,
That's
the mythology,
right.
connecting Moses specifically as the first tabernacle. And then, because it's interesting, in the Holy Royal Arch mythology, you're returning after the Babylonian exile is ended, and you're playing the role of those guys going to dig up the ruins of the first temple.
That's right.
And the second temple. And so what had happened was that since the second temple was going to be built on ruins, literally ruins after what had been left from the Babylonians, they had to initially reconstruct a replica of Moses' original tents style tabernacle, because they had no temple because it was still destroyed.
Well, see,
and so there's the echoing of that in our degrees.
Well, see, I also belong to what they call the Royal and Select Masters.
And what's the story with that?
Well, the Royal and Select Masters is primarily a degree that evolves around the Ark of the Covenant.
Oh, really?
Now, I know that you have degrees in the Scottish Rite that deal with the Ark of the Covenant. But I'm not that up on your degrees to say which one it was, but I know they're in there.
Right.
So, but there are 10 orders in the York Rite.
Right.
There are 33 degrees in the Scottish Rite.
Right.
On your pyramid, you show the 33rd degree. On our pyramid, we show the Knights Templar.
Uh-huh.
So, and in between that and the first degree, the entered apprentice, we have what we call orders. And there are 10 orders.
And it goes, from craft degrees, it goes to the Mark, then the Royal Arch, then the Red Cross.
We have the Red Cross of Babylon, or the Red Cross of Constantine.
Right.
We have the Royal and Select Masters.
Yeah.
We have the Order of the Secret Monitor, which goes around David and Jonathan in the Bible.
Yep.
And we have the allied degrees. I believe there is some references to your allied degrees in your degrees, but we have an allied order.
Yep.
We have also we have the operatives.
The operatives, that sounds
The
interesting.
operatives go back to the operatives.
More of a direct actual...
They are the operatives, yes.
Hard working with
That's
tools.
right. And then I think I mentioned Red Cross of Constantine. Naturally, you have the Knights Templar. And part of our Knights Templar also includes the Knights of Malta.
Right, of course.
Okay, so where yours varies a little different out there. And that's pretty much...
Excellent. Okay, so let's proceed then on into Lodge Room 2. As I had said on my intro here, I'd filmed Lodge Room 1 previously, so...
You've done that?
Yeah, I did that myself earlier. So we'll just zoom into Lodge Room 2 now. So how many different lodges are active in this center? Different degrees?
We have about 12. 12 different ones. Of the Blue Lodge, what we call the Blue Lodge, I believe there's 8. And no, there's more than 12. There's about 15, but they're orders. They're not lodges. So we have the Order of the Eastern Star, the Red Cross of Constantine, the Knights Templar, the Operatives. We have the 18th Scottish Rite in here, as you know, that I belong to also.
Right. That's where we met, right?
Scottish Rite.
Okay, so this is Lodge Room number 2. You know, obviously the chairs, et cetera, in Lodge Room 1 are what it's all about for the antique chairs and stuff.
What's interesting about
this... Some clever color on the...
Yeah, what's interesting about this lodge is this furniture originally came out of the Chelsea Lodge, which was in Chelsea. And when they moved over here to the temple, they brought the furniture with them for the temple number 2. But all this furniture was made by a brother.
Oh, I see.
All this furniture. He made all of it.
Interesting. Now, see here on the pavement, we have the so-called Lewis, right?
A Lewis is...
What's the blurb on that?
Well, basically the Lewis is a word being used for a person who is 18 years of age, comes in as the son of a Mason. Instead of at 21, he comes in at 18.
So why then is this triangular not hydraulic, but some kind of lifting mechanism for stone? Why is that also called the Lewis then?
Well, I'm not really sure because I've talked to several people on it and they can't really give me a definite answer on it. The only thing that I could think of is that it does depict on how certain stones were lifted, and basically, if you want to talk about a Lewis, this is the Lewis right here. Not this whole thing. The Lewis is here.
It's actually the hook
Is what
in
lifts
the
the stone.
Uh-huh.
And that comes from the operatives, because that's exactly how they lifted the stones. So
I see.
that is really the Lewis. Now, in our marked degree, we show a stone in the center of an arch.
Yes.
And there is a hole drilled down through that with a Lewis. So when the stone is lifted and put into its place.
So that's why this Lewis is associated with the mark. Because again, the mythology, then going back to the rediscovery of the temple ruins upon the return from Babylon, I believe the mark characters are the ones who find the keystone buried in the ground. And
That's right.
This is the same keystone we see in the Holy Royal Arch.
That's right.
But they find the mark on the keystone,
That's
therefore
right.
they know that it's
Yes.
the keystone to the ancient temple. They pull it out, but it's actually in the Holy Royal Arch. It's about going into the vault after the fact.
That's right. It's actually going back into the vault itself.
So the mark characters are the ones who discover the ruins of the vault, the arch, etc.
Well, they also made the various stones to build the arch
I see.
in the vault.
Oh, I see. That's why they recognize the mark.
Exactly.
I see. Okay.
Naturally, we do use the G.
Now
the same as the your Scottish
and why
movement in Scotland uses the G, which is very prominent in their square and compasses.
So
naturally, the G stands for God.
And we know, obviously, in America now, with the lodge setup, the altars in the center,
That's right.
the G and the all-seeing eye, etc., they're often on the wall behind the master in the east. Yeah. And the pavement usually isn't even there in America. You know,
That's right.
in American lodge, it's not there at all.
Yeah, they don't even have a pavement. Now, the pavement is designed that in the old days, when they did tracing boards and things, this part from here to here and would actually hang over a table.
Which is why we have a kind of a tassel type thing
there.
there.
On top of the table. Now this pavement, the black and white, represents day, night, good, evil.
All the opposites, right?
All the
interwoven.
Opposites. And also, if you'll notice, in our tracing boards, they are on the floor in the temples.
Uh-huh. And so now actually, let's get on the tracing board thing. That's one thing, again, in America, it's not really used at all.
No.
At all, really. They give you an iconography lesson with a big pull-down chart, etc., for your different degrees, but the tracing boards per se are not there.
Now this is the tracing board for the entered apprentice. And obviously you'll see various things. You have the rough ashlar. You have the smooth ashlar. You have a point within a center.
Now, in America, that circle with the two parallel lines on the outer edges of it, it's associated with the so-called Holy Saints John. John the Baptist, John the Evangelist.
Well, this is associated with where a master mason cannot err. Is it from the center of a circle? Now, the ladder is Jacob's ladder that connects heaven and earth. You have the three columns.
Representing the Ionic, the Doric, and the Corinthian.
Which is?
The Ionic is the Master's pillar representing...
you have beauty,
wisdom.
Wisdom.
The beauty is the Corinthian. The strength is the Doric.
That's right. And then that's right. So you have the sword, which is a typical Knights Templar.
Uh-huh.
You have, obviously, the sign for the senior warden.
Right, because that pillar goes to where the senior warden's thing is.
You have the plumb rule, because that's his column.
Yep.
This is the senior warden's column. This is the master's column.
Right, and the junior warden's. You can tell too with the ashlars, because the junior warden has the rough stone in front of his column.
That's right. And
whereas the senior warden has the perfect stone.
That's correct.
And the master, I guess, has the ladder.
That's right. And if you noticed, they have the tools of an entered apprentice here.
Right.
The 24-inch gauge, the chisel, and the mallet.
Right.
Now, over here on the altar, you see what they call the volume of the Sacred Law, or Bible, and it has the square and the compasses.
And with this, here's a question that no one seems to have an answer to, as is often the case with symbolism. Why is the star 7-pointed at the top of the ladder, yet the star we have, the blazing star in our lodge, as we see here, is 5-pointed? What's the difference between that?
I believe the seven stars, to see, you got what? 2, 4, 6, 7. To be honest with you, I never noticed the 7 stars. I think it's a mistake, because there are no 7 stars. You have 6 and 5.
Right. And
so
only thing
somebody goofed.
Well, it could refer to the kind of ancient Hellenic view of the 7 heavens that supposedly surround the earth.
It could, but I've really never seen it. Now, tracing boards are done locally.
Right.
And it's an interpretation of the individual who's doing it. It's like a painter who paints a scenery of something. That's what they see.
It's interesting because I was talking with Peter Thornton about that. He was showing the typical tracing boards for the Mark and the Royal Arch.
That's right.
And in the Mark one, for example, when they show the pillar in the vault, there's a zodiac surrounding the pillar on the floor. Yeah. And I was asking Peter, so why is that zodiac there? He said, you got to go back in time 200 years and ask the guy who painted it.
That's right.
In Victorian England.
Of why he did it that way.
And it occurred to him to do it that way, and there's no accountability and there's no definitive reason why.
You want to go to the second board?
Yes, please.
Now this is the second tracing board, which is the fellow craft, or the second degree. The story is that you have the steps that go up to the chamber,
the middle
where
chamber.
They are paid.
Right.
If you notice the board, the floor, the checkered floor.
And again, we see way in the background, I can see it with the zoom in, it's the same altar setup with the circle and the dot way in the back there. That would be in the so-called Holy of Holies.
That's right. Over here in the second degree, you have depicted by a waterfall.
An ear of corn by falling water.
Okay. So here's the corn, and here's the water.
Yep.
And you have your 6-star up there with the G.
See, now you don't often see the G inside the Star of David like that.
No, again, it's the interpretation of the individual who painted it.
Right. So there's no official rule book to say the G
this is the way it has
does
to
or
be.
does not go inside.
All he's saying is that the Jewish. Is it by coincidence that the Jewish star is made up of 2 triangles? Or was it originally done that way? I think originally it was done that way. Naturally, the triangle stands for what? Divinity.
Indeed.
It's the 3 sides, the 3. The 3 in the Kabbalah language is deity.
Right, it's the two opposite principles, and then the third, which brings them together as
as the deity. So it's really up to the interpretation of the individual who wants to do this. There's nothing that says that he can't do it that way. Mm-hmm.
And what's interesting here about the Fellowcraft degree, we see the winding staircase. And for example, in America, what they do is they actually lay out on the floor a series of steps that are large, and it's almost like you're going up a staircase. It's a little bit different in Victoria here. They have more of what they tell you about it instead of show you, but it's the same thing.
Here you have the 2 columns. One of the
Boaz.
two columns going into the temple.
Boaz and Jachin, right?
Jargon and
Boaz.
Boaz.
The terrestrial and celestial globes.
And here they are, depicted that way.
Yep.
So here are the tools. Your altar with the Bible here is your Jewish lettering.
Right, name of God, unpronounceable, which we also see in the Holy Royal Arch as well. In some of the iconography, that name of God that you see there, sometimes it's underneath the arch.
That's right.
In the icons.
Now this was done in 1958.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But the pattern that is mirroring is replicated ubiquitously through all the second-degree tracing boards that have emerged since the 1700s.
Yeah.
But eventually it probably does go back to somebody who took the ideas mentioned in the ritual and decided to give them a pictorial form.
Exactly.
Which may or may not be definitive.
That's right. Now here comes the third degree.
The Master Masons. And this
now,
is very
what's interesting in the third degree, in the Scottish Rite, from the English, when you get your third degree, you cannot understand all of the third degree board. And a good reason why. Because if you notice in the third up here, unless you are a mark Mason, you cannot decipher this.
I see.
And if you're in the mark, then you can decipher it because they have their own alphabet.
Uh-huh.
Naturally, the skull and crossbone is not by chance.
It's a Knights Templar symbol.
Is Knights Templar. And the Knights Templar skull and crossbone was really, everyone depicts it as the pirates. And what happened was when de Molay was captured and crucified, and Clement and the King of France,
Philip the Fair,
decided to take over all of the Templars' assets. The Templars escaped, and you got to remember that the Knights Templars were also very seafaring.
Yes, absolutely.
So when they were persecuted and had to flee for their lives, they only had one vocation to go to,
Scotland.
called the sea.
The sea.
That's why they used the skull and crossbone as Knights Templar.
Right, because once they were destroyed, their original headquarters had been in France. Well, actually,
That's right.
Once that is confiscated and destroyed, the headquarters became the fleet.
That's right. Now, again, you have the three tools. You have the five.
Now, what's this with the three numbers five there?
The fives are very interesting because they're really up for interpretation.
Huh.
The five could be the 5 points of fellowship.
Uh-huh.
Okay? The five can also be the five that the Kabbalah looks upon as far as the deity is concerned.
Mm-hmm.
So the five can stand for a lot of things. You can interpret it into a lot of things.
No, it's interesting.
It could be the 5 points of the star.
Right, of course. There's a
So
lot
you could
there.
go on.
And the 3 5s making 15, I've never seen that number.
15 doesn't mean anything to me.
No, not me either.
So the fives have to be separate. Again, you got to go back to the individual
who painted
put it on
it
there
originally
and said, what was the purpose?
Indeed. Now, in the center here with this arch, is that the mark language again on the arch?
Yes. This is your mark. Because on the mark stone, on one side is in English, the other side is in Jewish, Hebrew. Up here, you have the
sprig of acacia.
That's it.
Which marked the grave of Hiram Abiff. Hiram Abiff.
Hiram Abiff, which we all know is
the master architect.
Is symbolic.
Yes.
Because probably the true Hiram, who was hired by Hiram, king of Tyre, brought in, who worked for him originally, probably built the temple, went back home and retired and died of old age.
Right.
So they're using this as a symbol.
And it's interesting though, the whole figure of Hiram Abiff, the widow's son, etc., it does seem to have a very Egyptian type of connection. And if you had read, for example, the Hiram key, that book, they talk about how, you know, the mythology at the bare minimum. I mean, they're selling a whole plot about it being this one specific Egyptian pharaoh, you know, at the Sesquinara or whatever. But the undeniable pattern is similar eerily to the Egyptian mysteries with Osiris, etc.
Well, it should be for one good reason.
Which
Moses was raised by the pharaoh.
The Egyptians, right? Yes.
He was raised by a pharaoh. Moses was not a common person in Egypt. He was in high standards. He had luxury. He had education. He had everything that, from a hierarchy in those days, that's what he had. So Moses was not just some person out there.
Right.
So Moses naturally is going to bring back with him some of the things that are in Egypt.
Indeed.
And
so now
who is to say that Egypt, because if you look at Iris and some of their names, when they look at the names and you cipher the names and you find that they're really talking about a god.
Right.
So who says it's not the god we have?
Just the name is different for the culture.
The name is just different. That's all.
Now, interesting. Now, in the center, getting back to the tracing board here,
Yep.
underneath the arch, it appears to be kind of like a skylight or something.
Yes.
In the dome ceiling here.
And again, I have no idea what it is. Because there's no way to interpret that. The only thing you could interpret it could be this. It could be symbolizing the heavens.
And the window onto the heavens.
But they didn't have windows in those days.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point.
You know.
And
so I would say that it might depict something about the heavens, the stars.
And what is that? What does it actually say in the Hebrew on the arch itself there?
This one.
Yeah. What does that exactly say?
This is talking about the. Are you in the mark?
No, I'm not in the mark.
If you're not in the mark, I can't tell you.
Oh. Okay.
It does talk about Hiram, the widow, the son.
Hiram, the Hiram, the widow's son, sent to King Solomon.
Thank you.
Right. So that's the same thing we see on some of the circular.
That's on the stone
on the circular stone with the
mark of the
right. Okay.
Of the mark. That's the stone.
Okay, then just the last thing on this board then.
Yep.
The pavement leading in down these pillars into this curtain with one side open. What's the story with that?
Well, this is the inner sanctum of the temple.
Right.
Naturally, this is the floor of the temple.
And the curtain's open, leading you in there.
Going to the sanctum sanctorum.
Sanctum sanctorum, because now as the master, you're able to go in there.
That's right.
I see. And again, you can't tell me what this mysterious language says. Obviously, the calendar of lights being referenced there, right? 3,000.
This one? Well, actually, it'll depict about 5,000 because it's before Christ.
Right. So it's 3,000 years before Christ,
which is 2,000 now. So you're looking at 5,000.
Right.
So,
Okay, so that covers the tracing boards and things.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And just going to pull back now. Just generally, now again here, this is something that, I'm just wrapping up here, but this is something on the master's pedestal here.
You might want to do these.
Right, the working tools.
These are the working tools of a apprentice. And these are the tools of your fellow craft.
Which is interesting because they're the general tools that the lodge officers use.
That is correct.
In their symbols.
That's right. This is your worshipful master. This is your junior warden. That's your senior warden.
And why would the second degree tools have the tools that are correlating to the officers? Is there any reason for that, or is it?
No, I think it's just a matter of when you go into the fellow craft, you're really getting into the Masonic, and they're going into a more sophisticated tool.
Right.
And these are the tools of your master.
Yeah, now that thing, it's the pencil, the compasses, and what's the last one called there?
That is the...
Skewet?
Skewet.
And what does the skewet do?
Basically, it's a string, and you hang the string, and it's to level.
So it's...
To bring your things perpendicular.
I see.
Okay? But it's a more sophisticated way of doing it.
Ah, I see.
Because it's a master's.
And again, just here we have on the master's pedestal the
Jacob's ladder.
Jacob's ladder with the star. Now, interesting, it's a 5-pointed star here,
Which
whereas
is what
on the
it should have
tracing
been.
board, it's on
I think the
7.
guy just goofed.
And the volume of the sacred law
This
at
is
the
the volume
bottom.
of the sacred law. These are your 2 columns.
Right.
And this is the center in which a master mason cannot err.
And as I had mentioned, in America, those 2 columns are symbolically associated, and perhaps it's more of the Protestantism of the American view, with John the Baptist and John the Evangelist. And so the one represents the old, one represents the new.
Right. Now, when you go into our other orders, such as the Red Cross of Constantine, this symbol becomes
more of a
more
explained,
of Jonathan
more, right.
and John the Evangelist and John the Baptist and so on. When you go into these other orders, now they get into that.
Because in America, whereas here you say in the oaths you say something to the effect of a lodge duly, regularly approved, etc. In America they say they say dedicated to the holy Saints John at the end, and that means John the Baptist, John the Evangelist.
Because Saint John was the forerunner in the Old Testament.
Ah, I see.
Because John the Baptist baptized, but what's interesting, there's story out about John the Baptist, that he was a cousin of Jesus.
Indeed. There's a lot there.
I think he was.
The's a lot there. We'll get in that in the next segment.
And I think he was, but, you know, again, it goes back, you're depicting the Old Testament, New Testament. Because some of our orders here are strictly Old Testament orders. The others are strictly Christian orders.
Like the 18th, for example.
The 18th,
Red Cross of Constantine.
Red Cross of Constantine, but your Art of the Secret Monitor, your
Ark Mariner, for example.
Well, I don't know. I'm not in the Ark Mariner.
Well, it's Noah's Ark and stuff.
It'd be Noah's Ark, so it has to be. But your Roland Select Masters.
So there's basically a division between Old and New Testament orders in terms of their storyline.
That's right. Where we have some very good, I have some very good Jewish friends of mine who I've met in my other orders, Order of the Secret Monitor, Roland Select. Naturally, they stop at those orders because they can't go into the others because it's Christian.
I see.
And they cannot recognize.
That almost tends to undermine the Masonic claim to not favor any one religion.
Well,
almost.
There's always going, and really it's not the Masonic that is dividing them, it's the Bible. Because
same volume of the sacred law.
We use a Bible that has the Old and New Testament. They only use
the Torah,
Old Testament.
Right?
You know, the Quran or whatever.
Right.
So that's
okay. Well, wrapping up then for this segment, and again, Larry, thank you very much.
Always take a picture. They always toast the Queen.
Yes.
Where we don't have the president's picture, which I think they should have in the States.
Yeah.
So they always toast the Queen, as you know.
Right, the Queen and Craft.
That's right. But they're not really supposed to do it together. Because the toast is strictly to the Queen.
Excellent. All right, I'm pausing here.